Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about hiring and recruiting and race and gender quotas and quotas for minorities and so on. Now, there's been a flurry of articles, I guess, all around, in the media, in Australia, the United States, Britain, to even New Zealand. And what the articles are basically arguing that there's still some sort of invisible racism or genderism or something against minorities, and this is why minorities not being hired at the same rate as white folks. Now, this attempt, certainly in the United States, has been going on to hire minorities, or providing inducements and coercions to hire minorities, has been going on, as far as I'm aware, at least from the, the early to mid 1980s, or at least that's when I first came across in the United States. It could have gone back even earlier than that. I suspect it might have. But I was in a state, I can't remember if it was now Texas or Arizona, but it was in one of the US states, and the state government there had said that any organisation that wants to bid for government business must have a certain number of minorities on their staff, and they had to sign a legal declaration that they did have these people on as permanent employees. Now, this was this particular organisation that I was working with at the time wasn't a huge company. It maybe had only a couple of hundred employees, something like that. But they had to have 10% Hispanic, 10% Black, and I think it was 40% female, and so on. So they had to have, if they wanted to bid for government business. Now, the governments were pretty big spenders, so state government, and these people were sort of supplying services that typically a state government would need. So they kind of had to do it. If they wanted to stay in business, they had to do it, or they had to go and chase other markets if they wanted to stay around. So they hired people really as tokens. They invented these sort of jobs that weren't needed, paid the absolute minimum they could, and then put these people on. And their sole requirement was they were Black or from a minority of some sort. And nobody really cared if they were, if they could contribute anything meaningful to the organisation, because their sole purpose of being there was just so they could sign these race and gender quota forms. What I was surprised by was the company made no effort to hire qualified Black people or minorities generally. And the president of the company, we were out having a burger at his favourite burger joint, I think Fuddruckers or something, I think it was called. And we were sitting there. I asked him, why don't you sort of hire, at least the most capable Black people? And he said, look, there just aren't any around. He said, we busted our ass and beat our brains out trying to hire qualified minorities. They're just not there. He said, so just so we can check the boxes and tick the forms for the government. And they were doing okay out of government business. Just so we can tick the forms, then we just hire anybody. And I said, but these guys don't know anything about anything. So that doesn't matter. Their sole purpose is to exist just so we can tick those boxes. And that sort of had the opposite effect of really what the government was trying to achieve. You can see, some crazy leftist sort of Marxist, somebody who had looked at, the paradise nirvana is just around the corner. If we can just get more Black lesbians in jobs, then we're good to go. You can see how that childlike gender studies sort of thinking would have gone. But anyway, they were doing that, and that was his sort of view. Look, I've got to do it. If I want government business, I just got to do it. So I'm just going to hire the cheapest people that I possibly can. And he said, well, look, some of these minorities that just know a little bit, they think they're such hot shit that too difficult to control, so we might as well just have people that know anything. Then I can pay them the minimum wage. Now, his view was, well, why should I then spend extra money on trying to train these people? So he wasn't even trying to find people that, say, had the raw material there that they were trainable and teachable, and they could be shown. Maybe they would do okay, So because he said, well, that's an extra expense. Why would I do that? I'm being forced to hire these people when I want to for no commercial reason, just for ideological, equal outcome reasons. So why would I then spend extra money in training them? And I kind of saw his point. And anyway, he said, look, given all the companies bidding for government business have got to do it, he said, well, we've all put our prices up because we've now got to hire all these folks that we don't really need and don't want and contribute nothing commercially to the business. Got to hire all these folks. We get all that extra expense of just having them on the payroll just so it looks good. So we have to put our prices up. But as we're all doing it, then the government's paying, 25%, 30% more than. So that's money's being stolen from the taxpayer to give to the private company so they can enact policies to suit crazy leftist government attitudes and requirements and mandates and so on. Now, they could have. There are various ways they possibly could have made this work, like say to offer traineeships that the government would fund, and say the proportion of those have to be for minorities, for example. Then that would sort of kind of force companies to pick the brightest of them, and then do the training, or at least it would lead to more. Those sort of outcomes would have been more likely rather than the way it was, which was created as very perverse outcome of where it was taxpayer funded nothingness, no value was gained or anything like that, or certainly nothing material. So just on hiring people on the basis of minorities. Now this sort of stuff came into Australia a bit later. The Americans were the Marxist pioneers in this sort of thing. Britain later, Canada, and that following on. But one company I was at, I was the head guy there and head cheese, and we were hiring, I think it was a technical support coordinator. So they didn't have to be technically expert. They had to have some understanding, but they needed to speak good English and all that sort of stuff. And so the HR lady who had been recently attending like community college sort of courses on human resource management, that sort of thing. And I kind of got the impression that she was, the material in the course was very, very leftist, because she suddenly started talking about, quotas and, black lesbians being hired, and she started sort of giving that sort of stuff. But so she must have just heard it. She was no genius, and so she was listening to all that stuff, which sounds good. Did you know that 100 million black lesbians are murdered every year just because they didn't get a job? Did you know that? It's true. It's a fact. Yeah, so that's it. And so what are you going to do about it to help black lesbians? What are you? And pointing at some young HR girl. Oh, I'll employ black lesbians. Oh, this is terrible. I'll do. So they tell all these terrible lies about the so-called oppression that exists in the world and in society. And so they run off with all this righteousness in their head of, oh, I'm going to help fix this. And anyway, she this was more in the early stages of it. So she came to me. So I think, because we're all white folks working there. So I think we should hire and this is when the Asians were just starting to arrive in Australia in numbers. So, the Chinese and particularly the Chinese at that point. And so she said, well, I think we should, a Chinese woman came in for an interview for the thing. And I think we should give her a go, because then we can say we've hired a minority. And I was, well, no, what's that got to do with anything? Now, we were a branch office of a company, and, it's I don't know, there's less than 100 people there. So we were under no legal obligation at all to do anything. But she kind of pestered me and said, well, will you see her? Will you talk to her? And And I didn't really want to. I didn't see how it's going to work. And when I said, well, how good's your English? And I could tell by the way the HR lady responded that it wasn't much good. But I sort of just, okay, all right then, just to sort of satisfy myself here. And so this Chinese lady came in, and she'd probably be late 20s, early 30s, I guess, and seemed pleasant enough, but very, very Chinese in her mannerisms and behaviour. And they've got a certain sort of, when they don't speak the language very well, they go to a very tight sort of numerical sequencing of the language almost, which is how those large Chinese and Japanese character sets, how they understand them in the sort of the sequence of the logic. So for example, what I mean by that is if you're talking to again a Chinese person that doesn't speak English particularly well, they'll revert to a cultural interpretation of their minimal knowledge of English, and that creates some challenges. So by that, I'll give you an example of that. So say the price of the object is $999. They say, oh, how much? You say about 1,000. So about $1,000. Now they can't comprehend about 1,000. That doesn't seem to fit into their lexicon. So when the price is okay, so you write the price down. 999. You say 1,000. You say 1,000. Oh, now you say 999. Oh, you lie to me. And that's their sort of approach to that. You say no, 999 is about 1,000. So it's close. It's only one. Oh no. You say 999. So she had that sort of cultural baggage with her, but she's obviously desperate for a job, and I felt that, and her the anticipation that she'd been invited to come back, as far as she was concerned, meant that it was probably game on, or she's certainly hopeful of that. But her English just wasn't up to, she just couldn't have done it. Now, the rate of improvement in her English would have been too slow to make that work. Even and ahhed just about, say, maybe an elocution sort of course to help her move it along. But just as a Mandarin speaker myself, everything, the way the muscles you use in your mouth, the position of your tongue and mouth, all that sort of stuff, it's a completely different ball game, and it takes years of hard slog to master it and speak good English, as it would for me to speak perfect Mandarin. So I had to say no to her, and I felt bad because I could see how downcast and crestfallen she was by that. But I didn't, mess her around. I said, look, it's not going to work. Your English just isn't good enough. And I suspect, given the way she took it, I suspect she'd been turned down many times before, and again because of the language issue. But there's a wider narrative out there at the moment that's pushed by the globalists. I mean, where else? Because it creates social division, and that's what they want. I mean, they have to create the second era of serfdom, of feudalism. That's what they're trying to put on us. But they're saying that the talking points are, and certainly these media articles that I mentioned at the beginning of the piece, they're saying that the reason there's not exactly equal outcomes in hiring is because of evil white racism, and of course that's utterly absurd. Now, if you try and blind hiring tests have proved this, but if you hire on merit alone, the most industrious, most conscientious, hardest studying, most capable, most experienced, most energetic, all of these things, you're going to hire a white person, pretty much every time. Not every time necessarily, but nearly every time. If you want people to just do as they're told and say nothing, then maybe you'd look at some other races there. But it's going to be white people every time. And if you're looking at, say, advanced programming and coding, that sort of stuff, then it's going to be white males every time. And it's only where there are severe price pressures and the company maybe wants to hire the cheapest available, treat them like shit and pay them under the table, that sort of thing, then you'd see minorities there. Or in, say, take-out food stores, take-out food shops and that sort of thing, you'd see minorities there. Any job that can be reduced to monkey see, monkey do, you can see minorities in the majority. But anything else, any meritorious based hiring. So when they say, look, we want race and gender quotas, we have to do it because of the racism, and they haven't even proved the racism. So, well, look, the outcomes are different, therefore it must be racism, which is utterly absurd. And really, all the politicians who aren't on the left should be pushing back vigorously against that absurd narrative, because it's simply not true. And by the way, I've been in situations on interview panels where the HR department has insisted the recruiter has to put up an equal number of men and women, equal number of white and non-white, and that sort of thing to try and swing it. And even the leftists on the interview panel, like the HR women who are usually strongly left, when they tick the forms, has the person got the qualifications? Can they answer the questions? The technical questions, that sort of thing. Even they come up with, no, we've got to hire the white guys. Now they may kick and scream about, but it's not right. We should have black lesbians anyway. It doesn't matter because of reasons or something. They can't explain. It's all very emotional and very ideological. And white people have been oppressing the world for centuries, and so we have to stop white people from having good jobs. Or something. No, have to put people in the job that. When you explain it to them, all right, then let's hire people who've got a clue what they're doing, and let's have the company go out of business. Then you'll lose your job. How are you going to pay your mortgage? How are you going to put food on the table and all that thing? Oh, it doesn't matter. I don't care. And you get that sort of snotty response. But this idea of race and gender quotas is transforming the entire Western world, the business sector, even the body politic, the media, and so on. That there's this mediocrity, and 3.5 to 4 out of 10 sort of is now the sort of desired range. And there's a lot of HR directors out there that specifically have as a policy, we can't hire competent white people. We just can't hire them because it'll make all the minority hires look bad and feel bad about themselves, and make them realise that they're just being hired for a quota, not because they know what they're doing. So the way to solve this isn't to hire better people, it's to not hire good, well-qualified white people. Fuck. Can you imagine the madness you'd have to be thinking in your head to adopt a policy like that? But it's happening all over. I mean, how does Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Ayanna Presley or Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar and numerous other people, they're not the only ones, Maisie Hirona. The list goes on of people that would struggle to get a job on the Kmart refund desk and yet the Walmart refund desk, and yet there they are in the federal Congress of the United States. Once the most respected and vaunted political body in the world. Now it's just a bunch of half-assed idiots running around. Playing house, pretending to be grown-ups. It's insane. But this is happening all across now. And there was a time when, and I was younger then, but there was a time when I used to see what I thought were very impressive people. Now, I may not see them as impressive now as I've got older and got more experience and achieved more things and done more things and so on. But the people that are around now, whether it be in business or in politics, or in pretty much any walk of life, in terms of some form of employment, I don't think it's ever been as bad as it is. It's in terms of the quality. I guess if I go into a shop and I find someone who's just even a little bit switched on, and yes, they know where something is, or they can tell you how it works or something like that, say electronic store, that sort of thing, then I'm impressed, because that's quite rare. And most stores, and these are the lowest level jobs, people have got, they're paid a wage that makes the rest of their life almost pointless. They're close to subsistence peasants in a first world sort of context. So they've got nothing to get up in the morning and get excited about. So that's the wider some of the wider issues around the race and gender thing. It's been going for a long time. Again, getting on for what, 40 years, I suppose, and or 35 years at least. And for the time it's been going on, it still can't produce the result, the equal outcomes result that the Western governments, pushed and harassed and harangued by the globalists to achieve. It just isn't working. Now we've gone one further layer now in the incompetence and the cost of that incompetence, and that's the bigger issue here. The cost of it, the cost of denying employment or underemploying the most capable people and overemploying the least capable people. That is a collision of conflicting objectives there, and it's tearing the Western economy to pieces. Western economies plural to pieces. I guess there's another factor here too. I mentioned earlier on about whether it was Texas or Arizona, the government saying you had to employ a certain amount of minorities, so all the suppliers then put their prices up to cover the cost of this dead weight they had to carry. But it's now become official government policy. It's okay, we'll give you lots of government business. The government says to a private company, we'll give you lots of government business. We'll let you overcharge us. We'll let you screw the crap out of the taxpayer in terms of charging more than you really need to. But in return, you got to hire 1,000 black lesbians, that type of thing. And those backroom deals being made all over the place now. And that's another element that's death by 1,000 cuts. It's cutting away at the Western economy and the whole Western structure, the body politic, the universities. I mean, some of the professors that you see, you wouldn't get them to sweep the floor, let alone fucking teach anything. So these are all coming together now, and you can see them converging to the point where the West is going to be, in 50 years' time, possibly less. A lot of these Western countries are going to be third world countries. Not only are they going to be overrun with third world peasants, but the economy, the wealth creating economic structure that made the West as wealthy as it was, that's all going to be torn to pieces. Which brings me back to my concern about, or my view that really what the globalists want is to turn the West, if not the whole world, but certainly the West, into just some sort of feudal structure. We're all feudal, consume and tax cattle. That the globalists, small nucleus, say 1/10 of 1% of the world population sit at the apex, and just rivers of money. No one's going to have a competitive business for. It'll all be just broken up monopolies. They'll all share out the monopolies amongst themselves. And all the basics in life will have to be paid for by these consume and tax serf cattle, and that'll be what make the elite rich, and will keep the serfs in the feudal system, permanently within a whisker of bankruptcy or being just that sort of that closeness to subsistence that you see now in third world basket cases. Anyway, that's my take on things. You've been fantastic today. You're a Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.